Hey, what's going on, guys? You got TLR here, and we're back after 2 weeks of vacation. I was, out of the house, didn't have my recording software, and couldn't get any content to you guys. But we are back, and today I've got the finals of a tournament I participated in, the UUTC, which is the United Tournament Underground of Champions. It's a single battle style draft league with separate drafts, so that just means that multiple players can draft the same Pokemon. Anyway, this is the finals. I had topped the losers bracket, and my opponent had topped the winners bracket. So since it was a double elimination tournament, that means since he had not lost a game yet, I had to beat him twice to win the entire tournament because I had already lost once. So this was our first battle. My opponent was SentientPokeball, by the way, and yeah, he had drafted a very powerful rain team. I had just drafted 10 Pokemon that I thought were really good. Didn't really focus on synergy very much when I was drafting my Pokemon. But yeah, he leads off with Pelipper. I lead off with Hydreigon um, because I wanted to force him out. I knew he didn't want to lose his Rain right away, so I wanted to get a little bit of momentum early on. So I knew he probably didn't want to keep his Pelipper in and risk losing um, his Rain Setter that early. So I go for the U-turn as he switches into Muck, and that allows me to go right into my Mamoswine. And I also predict here that he wouldn't want to keep his Muck in case I went for Earthquake. So I went for the Stealth Rock here to severely pressure his team, um, make sure he couldn't get those rocks off the field. Now, this tournament, the way it was set up, was pre-bank only, so that means Pelipper couldn't carry defog at the time, and the reason for this is because um, the tournament started before bank was legal, so they just didn't want people using different Pokemon uh, for half the battle, half the tournament, and then having newly legal Pokemon for the second half. So yeah, I switched into my Hydreigon on the yeah. Anyway, I kind of lost my place there. He sends in Coco on my Hydreigon. I didn't know if it was Scarf Coco. I didn't want to risk it. I know it's not very common, but I definitely didn't want to risk it. So I switched in my Assault Vest Delmise, which can easily eat up the Dazzling Gleam, and then he goes for the Volt Switch, which I also eat up pretty well. I actually go for the Power Whip here, which was a bit risky because obviously he could have I could have missed, but I did think he was going to switch out, and I wanted to catch the Pelipper, which was kind of what I was expecting to switch in on the switch, so I could hit that thing with a powerful Power Whip. Powerful Power Whip. Anyway, so that drops him very low, and here I stay in just in case he wanted to roost. I went for Power Whip again. I was okay with getting rid of my Delmise at this point as long as it meant I could keep Pelipper low enough so that it couldn't switch into rocks again, which basically would prevent him from getting his rain back up after it wore off. So he's going to switch here into his Mamoswine as I go for the Dazzling Gleam, because Dazzling Gleam would have taken out Pelipper from that point, and it did hit the Mamoswine on the switch in. So I do a lot of damage to the Mamoswine right there, forcing him to have to switch out his Mamoswine if he wanted to keep it. So he does actually do that into his Muck, which I assume is Assault Vest, because obviously from this damage you're going to see this does just very little, just almost nothing. So yeah, he switches in his Muck. Obviously I don't do a lot of damage, so I'm going to have to get out of there because I don't want to lose my Coco yet. So I'm going to Volt Switch here so I can save my Coco for later, as well as do some more chip to the Muck. And I'm actually going to switch in my Hydreigon here, because at this point I deemed Hydreigon the most expendable, so I didn't need HP on Hydreigon. Or at least I decided that I didn't need HP on Hydreigon for anything at this point. So I switch in my Hydreigon. He knocks off my Choice Scarf, which is okay, I guess. And he also poisons me with Poison Touch, so Hydreigon's getting pretty low. I go for the Draco Meteor, not trying to predict, just because if he wanted to stay in, I wanted to be able to knock this Muck out. And I also thought he would feel that his Muck wasn't very useful anymore. As low as it wasn't switching into anything. So I'm able to take out Muck there. And he sends in his Metagross to revenge kill me. And again, I didn't think I needed Hydreigon for anything at this point, so I let it go down to his Metagross's Bullet Punch. So yeah, as you can see here, he does have the Mega Metagross. Very powerful Pokemon. Very hard to switch into as well. And he's just going to be able to knock me out with a Bullet Punch right here, which is fine. After that, I'm going to send in my own Metagross, because that's the only steel resist I have on my team, and I do have the Earthquake, so I thought maybe he doesn't carry the Earthquake and I can win the 1v1. But he does have the Earthquake, as he's going to reveal right here, so obviously neither of us are going to go down to the Earthquake, because Mega Metagross is also very bulky. So yeah, we both lose about 65% of our health to each other's Earthquake. Neither of us going down. And I am max speed on my Metagross, so I knew at this point that it was a speed tie. So I didn't want to risk staying in. I thought my Metagross was too important, so I'm actually going to switch right out into my Tapu Fini right here. Hoping he doesn't go for the Meteor Mash, because I didn't know if Meteor Mash 2 KO'd my Fini. I am very bulky, a bold set. But he does just go for the Earthquake, so that was good for me, because that means Tapu Fini can definitely live a Meteor Mash from this range. So next turn, he does go for the Meteor Mash and connects, and that's just going to do a bunch of damage. But again, I do survive pretty well actually, and I get the launch off a Scald, which doesn't knock him out, just barely. He hangs on, and so that's a little unfortunate for me, but it's fine. And he is just going to knock me out with another Meteor Mash. So down goes Fini, but he is within range of my Metagross's not Meteor Mash, Bullet Punch. So that's good. I can pick him off with a Bullet Punch. He does win the speed tie and get his Bullet Punch off first, but that's fine, because my Metagross is low to the point where it couldn't switch into anything anyway, so the chip doesn't really matter. And I can pick off his Metagross with the Bullet Punch. And he sends in Pelipper. He messaged me after the battle saying he forgot that Drizzle doesn't activate if the Pokemon faints upon switching. So he's going to lose the Pelipper to Rocks right there, and then he's going to send in Tapu Koko to revenge kill me. Now, Bullet Punch doesn't knock him out from this point, but I deem that I don't need Metagross for his last Pokemon. He has the Tapu Koko, the Kingdra, and the Mamoswine in the back, and I thought, I don't really need Metagross for any of those things, so I do let my Metagross go down. He reveals the hidden power. Now, it is super effective. I can't tell if it's fire or ground. I just kind of assumed it would be ground, because I just feel like that's a little better for Tapu Koko. It hits Magnezone, it hits Alolan Marowak, stuff like that. So he knocks me out, and I send in my Mamoswine to revenge kill with an Ice Shard and pick off Tapu Koko right there. After this, he sends in his own Mamoswine, probably guessing that I am Sash, because I am Sash on this Mamoswine. So he wanted to break that Sash with his Ice Shard. He does go first, but I am actually Adamant Mamoswine. I'm Adamant Sash Mamoswine, because I did want that extra power. So it probably wasn't a speed tie. I'm guessing he was Jolly. And so he breaks my Sash there, and then I am able to pick him off with my own Ice Shard. And now he sends in his Kingdra, which is his last Pokemon. Obviously, Ice Shard won't take him out, and he will just be able to knock me out with his water move that he decides to go for, which he goes for Surf. I do get a crit here. I don't think that matters, because the last Pokemon I have in the back is my Life Orb Tapu Koko, so Life Orb Dazzling Gleam should have knocked him out, even if the Ice Shard wasn't a crit. So yeah, he knocks out my Mamoswine with a Surf, and I just send in Tapu Koko, and I revenge kill the Kingdra with a Dazzling Gleam. So yeah, that was game one. But again, it was a double elimination tournament. He had won the winner's bracket, so that means he had not lost a game up to this point, which meant I had to beat him twice to win the entire tournament. So this is our second battle. So the finals of the finals, right? The winner of this battle came out on top of the entire tournament. So, yep. Second battle, he leads off with Mammoth Swine, uh, to get his rocks up ASAP, because obviously when I got my rocks up last battle, I applied a lot of pressure to him, so he wanted to apply that same pressure to me, and that's kind of what I guessed he was trying to do. He also, I kind of thought he'd predict me to switch, because obviously Tapu Koko can't really beat Mamoswine, but I do have the grass knot, so I'm able to hit him with that and drop him down to the sash as he sets up his stealth rocks, probably predicting me to switch, or maybe even deeming stealth rocks more important than his keeping his Mamoswine alive at this point. So he does withdraw his Mamoswine and sends in his Demise, which also I assume is Assault Vest Demise, because as you can see, my Dazzling Gleam only does about a quarter to 30%. So yeah, probably Assault Vest Demise, because his Life Orb Tapu Koko's Dazzling Gleam did about the same to my Assault Vest Demise. So I'm going to get out of there. I don't want to lose my Tapu Koko just yet. So I'm going to Volt Switch out of there into my Metagross. I kind of thought he would go for Anchor Shot, uh, because I didn't really have a Steel Resist, so I sent in my only Steel Resist. But he actually goes for Power Whip, which is fine, because obviously Metagross resists Power Whip as well. Now, I kind of thought he might switch out, but I also kind of thought he stayed. I actually went for Pursuit here, because I thought that he might want to save his Delmise in order to check my Tapu Koko for later. So, and even if he didn't, I got to do a lot of damage, and I thought maybe Pursuit would knock him out from that point anyway. So I'm actually able to Pursuit trap the Delmise right there and get rid of it very early on. Then he sends in a Scizor. Now my Metagross doesn't have any way of touching Scizor outside of Earthquake really, so I'm going to switch out into my Tapu Fini, because that's really my only Scizor check. It's not even that good of a check, because obviously it doesn't resist Steel, so boosted Bullet Punch is going to do a lot, as you're going to see in the next couple of turns. But I do have Haze on this Tapu Fini, so I can prevent the Scizor from boosting. So he does get up a Swords Dance as I switch into Tapu Fini. And then the next turn, he goes straight for the Bullet Punch, and as you can see, it does a lot. It does over 50%, not too much over 50%. So maybe if the rocks weren't up, I could survive 2 Bullet Punches after Leftovers recovery, but yeah, it does do a lot. 2 boosted Bullet Punches, because he's going to get... I'm going to haze away his boosts, and after that, I'm going to launch off a Scald to get as much damage as possible, but he does end up being faster than me, so what I could have done there was spammed Haze and prevented him from boosting up, but unfortunately I didn't. I thought he'd be slower, because obviously Tapu Fini is just naturally faster than Scizor, but I'm not actually running any speed on this Fini, so is faster, and he's able to get his Swords Dance back up and then knock me out with another Bullet Punch. So I did get some damage off though, so then I send in my Hydreigon, because at this point this is really my only other way of dealing with the Scizor. I do have Fire Blast on this thing, but he probably knows that at this point. Why would I send it in if I didn't? And he sends in his Pelipper to get the rain up, making my Fire Blast do significantly less. So, and then of course Pelipper resists as well, so this Fire Blast just does nothing to Pelipper. And since I needed Hydreigon to beat the Scizor at this point, I definitely did not want it taking any damage, so I'm actually going to switch out into Dumb Eyes, predicting the U-turn. And I wanted to keep that Kingdra out as well, because he did bring that in, and I didn't want that thing coming in just sweeping my entire team. So Lamise would make sure Kingdra doesn't come back in, but it does bait in the Scizor. So at this point, my way of winning was hoping that my Hydreigon could take a +2 Bullet Punch and get off that Fire Blast to at least put him within range of maybe my Mamoswine's Earthquake, so I could finish him off before he could roost up. So I go for the Earthquake there, hoping that he would just maybe make a misplay and attack me and let his Scizor stay low. But he doesn't. I go for the Earthquake again, just trying to keep this Scizor as low as possible. But I see that Earthquake just isn't doing enough damage. So at this point, I'm like, okay. So at this point, I have to get rid of the rocks and hopefully At the current health my Hydreigon is at, I can live the boosted bullet punch and knock him out. Not knock him out with a fire blast, but at least put him within range of someone else's attack with the fire blast, because obviously the rain is up and fire blast most likely wouldn't kill him. So he knocks me out with a brutal swing. So I send in my Hydreigon, and I was pretty confident I could tank it because, well, okay, a bulkier Caesar spread that doesn't have a lot of attack investment would have never knocked me out from that range. But he does end up being a more offensive variant of Caesar, Mega Caesar, so his +2 bullet punch is able to knock me out. And at this point, I have no way of taking down Caesar. I send in my Tapu Koko just like, hoping that it could take a bullet punch, but obviously it's slower than my Hydreigon was. It has less of a defense stat than Hydreigon does, so the bullet punch is just going to knock him out. Uh, so yeah, at this point, there's just no way I can win. I send in Metagross, just Earthquake. Hopefully, I can maybe get a crit, but like even if I crit this Earthquake and he knocks me out with a bullet punch, and then I send in Mamoswine after this. So even if I crit either one of the Earthquakes, which would have resulted in Caesar going down, then he just sends in Pelipper, and even if I flinch Pelipper down with Mamoswine's Icicle Crash, like I had to crit this Earthquake here just to take down Caesar, and I'm not going to do that. So, but even if I did, right, even if I did somehow manage to take down the Caesar, he sends in his um, Pelipper, and even if I flinch Pelipper down, then he sends in his Kingdra, and obviously, as you saw in the last battle, a crit Ice Shard was not going to knock that thing out. There was no way that was going to be possible. So he had this guaranteed win at this point, but I decided to play it out, just to get the full battle in. So yeah, he does end up winning the second battle and taking the title, taking the tournament and winning first place. So congrats to him. I got second place, which isn't too bad. I did have a lot of fun, and I'll be right back, and I'm going to show you my draft. So I'll be back in 1 second. And okay, so we are back, and with the draft for the UUTC, this was the team I drafted, all 10 Pokemon. So again, if you're unfamiliar with the UUTC it is a draft tournament where every player has separate drafts, so each player can draft the same Pokemon. So basically, if your opponent drafts a Pokemon, that doesn't mean you can't draft that Pokemon. Uh, if you watched the battles, you saw both me and my opponent had Mamoswine. We both had Mega Metagross. In the second battle, we both had Dhelmise, and we both had Tapu Koko. So yeah, we had a bunch of similar Pokemon. And this was my draft, so my first Pokemon, should be that. Yeah, my first Pokemon was Mamoswine, so I wanted to get a solid Stealth Rock user, and as far as pre-bank, because the tournament was a pre-bank set tournament, Mamoswine was probably the best Stealth Rocker at the time, especially for an offensive team. If you can see my entire team, it's very hyper-offensive, not a lot of bulk. So as far as a hyper-offensive team like this goes, Mamoswine has stabs that are almost unresisted. Only a few Pokemon resist both ice and ground. So that's why I wanted to draft them. Very solid Stealth Rock user, very solid offensive typing, 130 attack. It's very strong. I had the attack and the speed maxed out. For this tournament, also, when you draft your Pokemon, you have the sets locked in, so you can't switch that around in between games. So I had just max attack, max speed, the last 4 in HP just for a little bit of extra bulk. I had the Focus Sash because that way it could give me a last ditch effort, like if I didn't have a way of tanking a hit. So I could tank a hit with a Focus Sash and then possibly knock it out. But yeah, just a solid Stealth Rocker overall. And then I wanted another Stealth Rocker, so I also drafted Nihilego. Not nearly as strong, but a lot faster. And with the ability Beast Boost, it has the ability to, patch up its special attack after it gets a kill or two. So, yeah, just 3 attacks plus Stealth Rocks on this thing. Focus Sash for the same reason as Mamoswine can help me get up Stealth Rocks guaranteed, as well as providing a last ditch effort to beat a Pokemon because, with a Focus Sash, if you're at full health, you can't be knocked out in one hit. So, 2 solid Stealth Rockers and Mamoswine and Nihilego. Secondly, I wanted to draft some good. I wanted to draft some good hazard control, right? So I actually drafted Tapu Fini first. Right after that, um, with Moonblast, Scald, Haze, and Defog. As you can see, I'm running a very bulky set, very physically defensive, with just a little bit of special attack. The little bit of special attack helps with Garchomp, which I actually didn't run into too many Garchomps throughout the tournament. So that's one of the other things. Since you're drafting separately, you don't know what Pokemon your opponents are drafting, so you can't be like, oh, I see a lot of people are drafting Garchomp, better draft a good check for that. So, yeah, the little bit of special attack is so Moonblast does more damage to Garchomp. Um, and then Scald. Scald was because Surf does just a. It doesn't, in my opinion, Surf doesn't do enough more than Scald to justify using it when, obviously, you can't burn Pokemon in the misty terrain, but you can burn Pokemon that aren't on the ground in the misty terrain. So Scald gave me a way to burn flying types and levitating Pokemon. And if the misty terrain did wear out, then I could also burn Pokemon as well. So I just thought it was better than Surf. Obviously, Hydro Pump does hit a lot harder, but I did not want to risk the accuracy of that move on a defensive Pokemon like this. Then I had Haze. Haze was specifically for Caesar, so as you can see in my draft, I only have 1 Steel Resist, so I knew Caesar was going to be a problem. So I wanted Haze on Tapu Fini to prevent Caesar from getting Swords Dances up. And then Defog, obviously, because I wanted this thing as hazard control mostly. It's also a nice defensive check to a lot of Pokemon, like a lot of those fire types and water types and dragon types, dark types. There's a lot of, like, Water Fairy is just a really good defensive typing in general, and having this defensive Water Fairy type on a very hyper offensive team, it was just very good for me. Tapu Fini came in handy a lot throughout the tournament. My next Pokemon, I didn't want multiple ways of hazard control, so my next draft was Delmise, since again, being a pre-bank tournament, I didn't have access to some rapid spinners like Excadrill, or I didn't have access to Diva Gladios or anything like that. So I thought Delmise is pretty good because it's a grass type, and I definitely, as you can see, with my first 3 draft, I had a rock ground weakness. My bad. I had a ground weakness in Nihilego and no ground resistances, so I definitely wanted at least something to resist ground types, and Delmise provided that ground resistance and a rapid spin user, and just having a 131 base attack is just ridiculous. So, yeah, I drafted this mostly for those reasons, but it also provides a nice check to stuff like electric types like Tapu Koko and Xurkitree, and it also checks Araquanid, which is what the speed is for. I ran 20 speed to outspeed Araquanid, max attack, and then just the rest in HP to take hits better. Now, I didn't run into a lot of Araquanids in the tournament, so probably would have ran a more bulky Delmise if I had known less people would be running Araquanid. But Delmise still came in handy a lot just because it could hit really hard. A stab power whip just off of 131 attack is just ridiculously hard to switch into, even for some Pokemon that resist it. So after that, I guess I didn't really draft these in any particular order. I just thought, okay, what Pokemon hit hard and are just solid Pokemon in general? And the one of the first things that came to my mind is obviously Tapu Koko, with the ability to set up electric terrain, and with those stab electric type attacks in the electric terrain, they just very hard to switch into unless you're ground type or just a bulky grass type, like in Dumb case. Yeah, so I drafted Life Orb Tapu Koko. I opted for Life Orb simply because Life Orb allows you to get some KOs that Magnet slash Electric Plate normally couldn't get, but it does come at the cost of your HP every time you launch off an attack. But since my team is very hyper offensive, I wasn't really thinking that, hey, I need survivability on my Pokemon as much. I wanted more power. Instead, I opted for power over survivability, basically. So, I opted for Life Orb on my Tapu Koko with Thunderbolt, Dazzling Gleam, Grass Knot, and Volt Switch. I don't run Hidden Power Ice on my Tapu Koko, or I didn't run Hidden Power Ice on my Tapu Koko for this tournament because obviously Lando is not pre-bank, and that's the only Pokemon that Hidden Power Ice actually hits. Well, that's one of the only Pokemon that Hidden Power Ice hits harder than Dazzling Gleam. There are a few others, but I didn't deem them very threatening. I don't think Life Score is legal pre-bank either, but I had ways of dealing with Life Score even if it was, because I do have the Tapu Fini and the Memo Swine. Anyway, basically what I'm trying to say is I felt like Dazzling Gleam was more useful pre-bank than Hidden Power Ice was, so I ran Dazzling Gleam over Hidden Power Ice, and then I ran Grass Knot because I wanted to way to hit those ground types like Mamoswine. There was also Mudsdale that I had to watch out for. So I wanted a way to hit those bulky ground types really hard. And then obviously Thunderbolt is just a powerful stab move, and Volt Switch is a good way to get momentum that also hits very hard in electric terrain. I didn't have U-turn on this Tapu Koko, which I might, if I had to change my draft a bit, I might have run U-turn on this thing just to be able to guarantee momentum. Like if I had my Tapu Koko in and I knew my opponent was switching in their Mamoswine or something, and I wanted a way to guarantee momentum, but like even if they didn't switch out, I'd still be able to get out of there. I might run U-turn because obviously U-turn is just pretty solid on Tapu Koko in general if you want to get momentum. But I opted for these four moves because again, I really wanted ways to hit my opponent hard, and these are pretty much the four moves that hit the hardest as far as Tapu Koko's moveset goes. So my next Pokemon was Garchomp. Obviously, everyone knows the power of Garchomp. Just hits like a bus with 130 base attack. I have max speed, max attack, just to hit as hard as fast as possible. With the Fire EMZ, now I ran Fire EMZ because again, I knew my team was weak to Scizor. So I wanted another way to possibly check that thing. So Fire EMZ Garchomp on a Fire Fang. Oko's even the most physically defensive of Scizors, outside of the rain, of course. As you saw, my opponent in the finals did bring rain, so Inferno Overdrive probably wouldn't have Oko'd, but it might have been nice, because Garchomp doesn't go down to a +2 Bullet Punch, and then can retaliate with a Fire EMZ, but I didn't want to bring that in and have it only there for Scizor. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. I drafted this thing just because it's very strong and very fast, and again, I was taking a more hyper-offensive approach to my draft. Swords Dance, Outrage, Earthquake, and Fire Fang. If my opponent runs out of ways of taking care of Garchomp, it could easily just sweep through a team. After I set up a Swords Dance, the Fire EMZ with Fire Fang, obviously mostly for Scizor, but it also hits other checks to this thing like Tapu Bulu and Shiinotic. It just knocks them out, and Celesteela, right? After a Swords Dance, you can just knock those out. I opted for Outrage over Dragon Claw because, again, my team was very hyper offensive, so I just wanted as much power as possible. My next Pokemon was Hydreigon, which I went for Choice Scarf Hydreigon because I wanted a Pokemon that could revenge kill those faster mons like Tapu Koko and Pheromosa. Now, obviously, Tapu Koko and Pheromosa won't die to a Dark Pulse. Pheromosa goes down to Fire. Draco Meteor, but Tapu Koko is immune. But just being able to outspeed fast Mons was something that I wanted on the team. Uh, sorry. Um, yeah, having a Choice Scarf run I thought was necessary for this team because it is hyper offensive, and I needed a way to take down threats like Pheromosa that would outspeed my entire team otherwise. So that's why I opted for Choice Scarf Hydreigon. Could knock out Pheromosa with Fire Blast, or Draco Meteor has U-turn to gain momentum. Levitate, which is nice because again, my team doesn't have a lot of ways of switching into ground type Pokemon. And Fire Blast was another way of dealing with Scizor if I could, keep Hydreigon alive in order to hit Scizor anyway. But yeah, this was my revenge killer on the team, my speed on the team. My next Pokemon was Magearna, which I opted to run Choice Specs, and that's simply because I wanted to be able to deal as much damage as possible in as little amount of time. So obviously with Magearna's ability Soul Heart, it can boost its own special attack every time a Pokemon faints. So in single battles, that's only going to be when my opponent's Pokemon faints, but that means it can, if it gets a kill, it can start to really sweep through my opponent's team, which is a great way to run Magearna, but I opted for a more hyper offensive approach with my Magearna. So I just went for the Choice Specs because Choice Specs Floor Cannon is extremely difficult to switch into off of 130 special attack. It's OHKOing stuff like Gengar at that point, and Gengar resists Fairy type moves, so that's just ridiculous. And then Flash Cannon for the secondary stab. Aura Sphere hits Magnezone, so Magnezone wouldn't want to try to switch in and trap me. Right? Because like I wanted a way to threaten Magnezone, so it wouldn't just try to switch in and trap me whenever it felt like it. And then Volt Switch was another way of gaining momentum for me, which is nice on a choiced mon like this. So yeah, it's also pretty decently bulky with the 115 defenses. So it was another way that I could take hits in a worst case scenario, but obviously I'm running a more offensive build to it. I'm running just enough speed to outspeed uninvested Tapu Fini, which isn't super common. Most Finis do run a bit of speed, but I also thought it was a nice benchmark. I also outspeed stuff like Mandibuzz and Mega Scizor, stuff like that. So, and then the rest in HP to tanks hits just a bit better. So, my next Pokemon was, if we can get to it, Mega Metagross. So each team got to draft 2 Megas. So my first Mega was Mega Metagross, and that's just because it's super strong. Obviously, it does help because it's the only Steel Resist I have on the team, so it was a way to switch into other Mega Metagrosses. I could also switch into Magearna, stuff like that. But when I was drafting it, basically what I was thinking of is I just want a Pokemon that hits super hard and super fast and doesn't need any boosting or anything like that. So Mega Metagross is the first thing that comes to mind because it fills that role extremely well with the ability Tough Claws, boosting its contact moves, which I have Bullet Punch, Meteor Mash, and Pursuit, and then Earthquake is the last move. Bullet Punch because I wanted to have a way to revenge kill faster mons like Pheromosa, because obviously Pheromosa outspeeds my entire team. In fact, Pheromosa pretty much outspeeds every Pokemon in the game. There's only, 2 Pokemon faster than Pheromosa? So I definitely wanted another way of dealing with that in a worst case scenario. Meteor Mash is its hardest hitting stab move. Earthquake hit those bulky steel types and bulky fire types that would try to switch in stuff like Magearna, right? Well, Magearna probably wouldn't be switching in, but it hit other Mega Metagross, it hit Arcanine, it hit Marowak, Alolan Marowak, stuff like that. So that's why I opted for that. And then Pursuit was for Pursuit trapping Tapu Lele mostly, but it also came in handy for Pursuit trapping stuff like if I could scare out an Alolan Marowak, or as you saw in the battle against Sentient Pokeball, I was able to scare out of his Dhelmise and Pursuit Trap it, so it just came in handy often. I didn't want to run Zen Headbutt because I wasn't running Tapu Lele on my in my draft. I didn't draft Tapu Lele, so and then Zen Headbutt, it doesn't have the greatest coverage. Psychic isn't the greatest offensive coverage, so I opted to leave that one out since I didn't have any way. Because like if I had drafted Tapu Lele, and then I wouldn't mind having Zen Headbutt on my Metagross because then Zen Headbutt would be hitting very hard under Psychic Terrain. But since I didn't, I just opted not to do it because the offensive coverage from Zen Headbutt just wasn't very good. So, and yeah, as for the spread, I'm just running max speed and max attack just to hit as hard as fast as possible, which is what I wanted Metagross to do. And then my last Pokemon and my second Mega was Mega Pinsir. Now, this Pokemon really speaks for itself. I wanted another Pokemon that hit very hard and very fast, but I also wanted a Pokemon that could win a game if it got the chance to set up, and that's what Pinsir did. After a Swords Dance, its return is so ridiculously hard to switch into that resists. Like Tapu Koko can't even switch into it after it's at +2 because it'll just if it doesn't die, then it gets put within range of a +2 quick attack. So its switch-ins just disappear after it gets a chance to set up a Swords Dance. And so the set I'm running is very standard. Quick attack for that priority and taking out faster opponents, especially Pheromosa, because obviously Pheromosa is one of the best Pokemon in the game. So good that it was actually banned just yesterday. So, yeah, but it was legal for the tournament. So, um, didn't run into a lot of Pheromosa though. That's beyond the point. I'm going on a tangent again. Quick attack was again for picking off those faster threats. Return was obviously its strongest stab move. Earthquake, well, stab after aerial aid, of course. Earthquake hit everything that flying type return did not. It hit steel, rock, and electric super effectively, which are the only 3 types that resist flying. And then Swords Dance again because I wanted a Pokemon that if it had the chance to set up, it could win a game. So that's what that's the role that Pinsir fulfilled on this team. So again, this is my draft that for the tournament, very hyper offensive. I do like hyper offense as a playstyle, but I don't know if I would draft such a hyper offensive team in a future tournament, just because it's very if you see your opponent has drafted a more hyper offensive team, it's very easy to play around that. While if you have a hyper offensive team drafted, you can't just, change your team to a bulkier team. In this kind of tournament where you have to draft your team and the sets and the items, you can't change that in the middle of the tournament. So yeah, that made it a bit harder for me because obviously when you see my draft and see how hyper offensive it is, it's a lot easier to build for the team. But the team still did pretty well again. I did place second, which I'm actually very impressed with because again, when I drafted these Pokemon, I wasn't necessarily thinking of synergy. I was just thinking of what Pokemon were strong. The only times I really thought of the synergy was when I was drafting something. I'm like, okay, what is my team weak to? And then I'm like, okay, my team is weak to a Caesar, or so I better put Fire EMC on Garchomp or something like that. But anyway, yeah, I didn't think about how the individual Pokemon work together. So if I had to draft again, I'd probably go in with a set team in mind. So like a set team of 6, and then I'd draft those 6 and then have 4 backup just in case my opponent was set up for these 6, my original 6, right? So that's probably the mindset I would go in with if I was to do this tournament again, which I probably will. This is a yearly tournament, so next year I'll probably do it again, and that's probably how I am going to take my draft. Right? Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that's my draft. And as far as my overall thoughts on the tournament, I did have a lot of fun. Um, some of the most intense battles that I've ever had as far as Gen 7 goes. Everyone in the tournament was an extremely solid player. You're not going to find a group of people that are, or as far as my experience, I probably couldn't find a more experienced group of Pokemon players all grouped up in the same place at the same time, right? So just being able to participate in this tournament, it was a lot of fun. I'm really grateful to have gotten second place. I didn't even think I would have gotten second place. I ended up actually losing round one, which was my first loss for the tournament. But again, it was double elimination, so I was actually able to take it back and make it all the way to the finals, which was quite impressive. As far to me, I feel like that's impressive because I definitely did not expect to do that. But yeah, everyone in the tournament was extremely good, and I am so glad to have been able to participate in the tournament. I definitely learned a lot too, especially about how to go about any other tournaments that draft league tournaments that I might participate in the future, and just tournaments in general. I learned how to make certain plays when I need to, and when certain plays aren't necessary, and all that stuff like that. So, if you're ever thinking about participating in a tournament like this, I definitely recommend it because it's a lot of fun and a very solid learning experience as well. So, if you like Pokemon, if you like competitive Pokemon, yeah, you can try out a tournament. You can try out UUTC as well if you, um, you know, are eligible and apply for it, right? If you apply for it and you actually, if you get accepted in, right? I don't know what I'm saying at this point. I'm just kind of ranting on. But yeah, if you ever have the chance to participate in a tournament like this, definitely go ahead and do that because I had a lot of fun and I think you guys would have a lot of fun too. So with that, I'm going to wrap this video up. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll get back to uploading more Battle Spot lives later this week. I'm going to attempt to form a schedule for uploading so I can actually, so you guys actually know when a video should be coming. I'm going to attempt to do that. But if you know me, my mind is all over the place. I have a hard time concentrating on one thing at a time, and that can sometimes cause delays in uploading. So, yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, again, this is the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later. So.